MLB DFS picks. Friday night, July 26th. Everyone is familiar with the top tier options. We all know the studs and their stats. We're familiar with their pitches, their bio, their background, their matchup. So we, as always, will go out of the base path and look at the fringe options. Look at the overlooked, the undervalued, the players that you may not be familiar with, the players that other DFS advisors / touts may not be familiar with, and rightfully so. They need to spend time talking about studs, and so they don't really dig into the dirty plays. Let's get into the dirt. Get out of the base path. Carson Fulmer, who is this guy? Former top 10 draft pick almost a decade ago out of Vanderbilt. SEC stud coming into the White Sox. High expectations. Like many of the White Sox young pitchers a decade ago, they went through a ton of guys came through. Giolito, Quintana, Rodon. He was yet another one of those guys that was going to transform the organization. How'd that work out, Chicago? Maybe Chicago's fault. The former prospect blames Chicago for the fact that he's $7,400 in a matchup versus Oakland. If he was a stud and it worked out, it'd be a little bit more expensive against Oakland. It didn't work out. He's been around the block a couple times. He says that coming out, the White Sox worried about his arms, the longevity, and they changed his technique. He wasn't as violent and as aggressive. And they toned him down, which he disagreed with, and that's why things never worked out for him. He claims, I've got a rubber arm, I can pitch forever. This is the wrong thing. Great fastball, great changeup. Fastball's still pretty good these days. Changeup is still really good as well, but it's not high 90 stuff. Probably never get back to that. Those years are probably ruined. And you can blame the White Sox, but he's been on every organization since. Every team has traded for this guy, picked him up as a free agent. 5-6 teams have tried to figure out what's going on. Now, after a year out of baseball, the Angels give him a minor league contract, makes the team, pitches in relief for most of the year, and pretty solid, decent numbers. 51 innings so far this year, and a 3.66 ERA. Now, the FIP, xFIP, a little bit higher. BABIP is kind of low for a guy who generates a good amount of ground balls. We expect some regression, bit of a red flag. Even his strand rate could come down a little bit, and that should mean more earned runs. But we are 51 innings in. He isn't allowing a lot of home runs. Is he the top stud that he once was? No. Is he a decent pitcher? Probably going to settle in as a back rotation guy for the rest of his career if things continue the way they are. The only concern with him is the same concern that it has always been for him. He walks too many batters. He struggles with control. Walking batters leads to earned runs. Walking batters shortens games for pitchers. All those things are no good for DFS. And you're probably saying $7,400 for Carson Fulmer, probably too high. But it is Oakland. And if he can control his pitches, not generate too many walks, he can pile up Ks, go a little bit deeper, and get a win. Oakland strikes out 26% of the time. Now, they have been hot over the last week. You could argue, though, it's been matchup dependent. If you really do look at the lineup, there are a couple bats at the top of the order that do scare you a little bit in Oakland. Rooker being mainly the one that scares me the most. But other than that, the top of Oakland's lineup, sure, a little scary, but it's really not. And you look at what they've done over the season against righties, this is nothing to worry about. Yeah, they're average, WRC plus 101, but the strikeouts can't be ignored against a guy that has pretty good stuff if he's just not walking batters. Now, Fulmer just faced Oakland. He went 4 innings. He allowed 3 earned runs. He did only surrender 5 hits, but again, he gave up 2 walks. Didn't get the strikeouts. So again, people probably saying, what are you doing? We're not playing Carson Fulmer. He didn't pitch well. He got 5 fantasy points against Oakland. He's facing them again. Why would it work this time? You're right. But my argument is, you look at the game before that against Seattle. He struck out, how many? 7, 8 in that game with 6 innings against Seattle. The game before, he only went 4.2 innings But in those 4 2/3 innings, 7 strikeouts. Like, oh, well, I still can't play this guy. He's not pitching deep enough into games. That was just his first start. He's been a reliever. He's made 2 starts. Both were 4 2/3 innings. He's not allowing a lot of hits. The walks really haven't been that terrible. It's been a lot lower of late. Strikeout potential is there against Oakland. The issue with him is his damn curveball. It's not any good. He uses it sparingly. He should use it not at all. Anytime that he gives up home runs, which in the last game, you can look at his baseball smart stats. Fastball is grading out well. Changeup grading out well. The curve is terrible. He only uses it a couple times, pulls it out of his pocket, and then the thing goes over the wall. The WOBA and ex-WOBA on his curveball is ridiculous. When he doesn't use it, he is fine. So if he pockets the curveball, and that's what Oakland hit, if he pockets that curveball, there will be no worries. So it's very simple. Fastball changeup, you're going to beat Oakland. Luis Ortiz. We've teased about Ortiz in the past. Another reliever, another top prospect, although he's on the natural ascent. He's not washed out by any sense. Rookie last year struggled a little bit. Struggled last year because he had control issues. This year, pitches well in the minors, comes in the pros, does well in relief, and they put him in the rotation about 5 games ago. So again, number 4 prospect for Pittsburgh. Tough rookie season or campaign. Great minor league baseball strikeout numbers. Made some tweaks. That got him a spot back in the rotation. And really it was just control issues. And they seem to have figured it out. And the thing I mentioned a couple shows ago, in that first start against Cincinnati, he only reached a 3-ball count once. So he's hitting the strike zone, attacking hitters as a starter in those, 5 or 6 games? I think it's 5 games. He has a 101 ERA. Now, obviously, he's got a 257 this year. Pitching pretty well, keeping the ball in the park. But as a starter, again, a 1 ERA. And the numbers are even better. The strikeout rate's about the same, 7.8 Ks per 9 as a starter. Walk rate is 1.0. You love that. And then we look at the last game. 7 innings, no earned runs, just 3 hits, didn't get any strikeouts. But this was against Philadelphia. That is an excellent game. That is great. Now you get him against Arizona. Not the greatest matchup in the world. They don't strike out. Decent amount of power. Decent WOBA. A little bit above average WRC plus. But by no means a team you can't target or attack. Be a little bit worried targeting Arizona with a lefty, but Ortiz is a righty, so not a big concern. And again, since he is in the 73 to 7,400 range, probably going to go overlooked. But definitely a lot of potential with how well he has been pitching. All right, our next out of the path pick, Kyle Harrison, 6,900. Who this guy? Good question. He is the number 1 prospect for the San Francisco Giants. The lefty is the number 24 prospect in Major League Baseball. This game is going to be a rematch against Colorado. What did he do in the first matchup, which was at Colorado? Struck out 6 Rockies, allowed just 1 hit, no earned runs, 5 innings pitched. Now you get him for 6,900 at home in the Extreme Pitchers Ballpark. Although being decent amount of ground balls doesn't really help him as much, but still helps keep the ball in the park. You really like 6,900 for Kyle Harrison. 386 ERA on the year, 444 xFIP. He's given up a bit of runs over his last handful of starts. Nothing too severe, but you also have to look at those matchups. He's faced Cleveland, Arizona, which are very good against lefties, the Mets, which are very good against lefties, Philadelphia. He also faced Minnesota and Houston and had pretty good results against Minnesota and Houston. So this, by far, is the easiest matchup he's had in quite a while, other than his last matchup, which was against the same exact team, but now in an even better spot. He's got an elite fastball, an elite slurve. In 3 of the last 4, that fastball and slurve / curve, Baseball Savant calls it a slurve. Fangraphs is going to identify it as a curveball. Either way, it's been elite in 3 of his last 4 starts. Colorado, bottom 5 ranking against fastballs. Colorado, bottom 5 ranking against curveballs. And so it would make sense why he was able to have a pretty good game against them, because they don't match up well against those pitches. And for all intents and purposes, they don't match up against anybody with a 25% K rate against lefties. They do have a little bit of pop, but again, that's going to be inflated by playing in Coors Field. Overall, though, their WRC plus is 87, pretty below average against left-handed pitching. Really good matchup for him. Oh, and also we know that when Colorado leaves Colorado, they don't play very well. So you got that boost going for you, which is nice. Our next out of the path pick, Trevor Rogers. You'll notice a theme on this show. Often we talk about pitchers where it just didn't work out for them. Pitchers that you may remember a handful of years ago, talking highly of and expecting them to be the next big star. Trevor Rogers, like a Carson Fulmer, fits that mold. Hopefully Kyle Harrison doesn't end up being that guy as a top prospect. But years ago, Trevor Rogers came onto the scene of Miami and everybody was super pumped. And as is most times the case, Fulmer being an exception, just a guy that couldn't quite get it together, injuries derailed Trevor Rogers. He's back this year, slowly working back to form. Probably will never become the guy that we want or expected. And when he posts a 1-9 record, you think, yeah, probably not. And similar to the guys that we've talked about before, having a little bit of control issues, walking batters, not attacking batters, he still has been able to log over 100 innings pitched. Now, playing for a better team maybe wouldn't have A, an opportunity, or B, as long of a leash, but being on Miami, to let him go out there. They're digging down with some minor league arms that aren't that great to begin with and calling them prospects. Anyway, we look at what Rogers has done this year. Very good ground ball rate. Home runs aren't really killing him, as you'd expect in Miami. ERA is not good. xFIP isn't that good. And some people might be shaking their head saying, look, the guy's not that good. And he's facing Milwaukee. Well, Milwaukee's really not that good against left-handed pitching. The strange thing, I mean, you can go through Milwaukee's lineup and look at what they do against lefties. So Yelich is gone. Adames hits righties. For whatever reason, the righty can't hit lefties. So, yeah, you got to worry about Contreras and a couple bats at the top. But Milwaukee is really nothing to scare you about. And, yeah, it is a bit of a hitter-friendly ballpark in Milwaukee, but he's been generating a lot of ground balls. You look at his last start, 5 strikeouts, just 1 earned run. Would like to see him go deeper. But there's absolutely potential with Trevor Rogers. He's been much better on the road, which is kind of surprising. Again, pitching in Miami, you'd think something from him. But you look at what he's done recently, and the thing has just been his fastball velocity, trying to increase it. Although in his last start, his velocity dipped back down. But then again, in his last start, he looked pretty good. And that was against the Mets, where he allowed 1 earned run. So you may be looking at it saying, it's not that great of a game. The Mets are good against lefties. And Rogers allowed 1 earned run. That's a pretty solid number. It's a pretty solid start. And 4 2/3. I know it says 4 on the screen. It's just because we've removed the decimal point. It should round up. Well, it's not going to round up because it's 4.2. You can see in the top left. Yeah, we would like to see him go deeper. But I would argue that Milwaukee is an easier matchup for Rogers. He's been pitching really well of late. You look at June and July. June, his ERA was 3.56. July, his ERA was 3.38. He is getting back into form. He's getting back into shape. As I mentioned, his fastball had increased in velocity, came down a tick last game, but for whatever reason, his fastball was really good. He was generating a lot of swing and misses, despite it not having the same amount of velocity. Could be that he's helping his control. Either way, he's getting into the group. Is he going to be this elite stud? No. But 6,100 and what I argue is a favorable matchup. I'm not really worried about the current Milwaukee lineup. I don't think they were great all season, and I think they're even weaker now. 6,100, definitely someone to look at. Now, last is a pitcher that we're not going to play, but a guy that I have dug into, to learn a little bit more about. And sometimes in trying to find one of these cheap pitching options, we just find someone that you're probably going to want to stack against. First clue being $5,300. Second clue being at Baltimore. He is the number 7 prospect for the San Diego Padres, or at least was at once upon a time. High K numbers in AAA. But he also allowed a lot of runs. Now, many of those runs were on home runs in the PCL, so maybe you give him a little bit of a pass. But he hasn't really been that great in the pros, as you can see with the number on your screen. 7.84 ERA in 31 innings. 1.5 home runs per 9. Walk rate through the roof. And if you dig deeper into it and you're looking at the StatCast data, it's really not good looking at all. The exit velocity average on his balls batted in play, they're getting tagged. Even worse, the launch angle is up near 20 degrees on most of these. So they're not grounding the ball. They're putting it in the air. They're putting solid contact on it. It's going to be a long day for Adam Mazer, if I'm saying that right. And look at his splits. Lefties are killing him. Righties, pretty good as well. But left-handed bats probably going to crush him into oblivion on Friday night slate. Those are your out of the base path picks. Fringier options. You want to pay up, pay up. You want to go a little cheaper. We got Fulmer, we got Ortiz, we got Harrison, we got Rogers. All worth the conversation, all worth the discussion. There's your information. If you want to get access to the sheet, there's a link below. It's free. Post it with the stats. Thanks for joining me. Like, subscribe, share.